One.
Good evening and welcome to the March 10th, 2021 Select Board meeting. On March 12th, 2020, Governor Baker issued an executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, allowing bodies such as the Select Board to operate on a remote platform such as Zoom. In addition to the meeting credentials that are on our meeting agenda, there's also information about how to follow along on television, and you can also stream from the MATV website. If everyone would please join the board for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I would like to note that today is the 1-year anniversary of Governor Charlie Baker's declaration of a state of emergency, and we've lost a lot of people in our country and in the Commonwealth, and many more have thankfully recovered from COVID-19, and we're now in the vaccination stage, so there's a great deal of hope, but at the same time, I do think that it's fitting that we take a moment and just remember our shared struggle and those who didn't make it. Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. At this time, we have public comment. And thank you, Hillary, for putting the directions up. For those who wish to make a statement this evening, if you are using a computer, you can move your cursor to the bottom of your screen and click on the raise hand feature. For those participating by phone, although I don't see anyone at the moment, but just in case someone joins us in the next few seconds, if you press *9 to raise your hand and then press *6 to toggle on and off mute. I don't see anyone. Thank you very much. And our next agenda item is a COVID-19 update. And we also will be looking at a letter to Governor Baker about vaccine distribution. And I'll also be moving up an item that's actually at the end of the agenda about the use of the gazebo because it is COVID related. So Mr. Dennehy, if you'd like to update us, please.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Yeah, so last week, Thursday's report, the data seems very good for the town. We are heading in the right direction. It was our 5th consecutive week as a moderate risk community. Our percent positivity hovered just above 1%, which is the first time it's been in that range since prior to the holidays. I believe November 6th was the last time we were in such a state. On Monday, the park commissioners, if you recall, closed the parks effective immediately in December based on an uptick of positivities in the town. They undid that on Monday, and the parks are effectively open. Masks are mandatory. Playgrounds, street hockey courts, basketball courts, baseball fields, football fields. The only thing closed at this time are the tennis courts, and that's an operational piece that they can't get the nets in. The freeze-thaw cycle tends to bend the metal, which can expand the concrete. So with the exception of the tennis courts, the parks are back. They're no longer passive, but masks are mandatory and will be enforced. So that's good news. The vaccination program continued this week over at the Council on Aging. Second doses were handed out yesterday and today very successfully. No word back from the Baker-Polito administration or Department of Health about the Norfolk County 8 regional community vaccination program. But Caroline is very optimistic with how the vaccination is going in our community. On March 21st, the Sunday after St. Patrick's Day weekend, if you will, the town will be hosting a free drive-through COVID test day at the Public Works Yard from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So we continue to advocate that people practice social distancing, continue to wear a mask, and follow CDC guidelines throughout town. Some scientists are very concerned about the strains that are coming over from the UK or Brazil, that they may impact our positivity rate going forward. So we cannot let our guard down. As you said, Madam Chair, it's a year ago today. So it's good to see, but we need to continue the progress as the weather gets better. Obviously, people want to get outside and enjoy our beautiful town, but they need to stay focused and make sure that they're following proper guidelines. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Dennehy. Do members have any questions or comments for Mr. Dennehy? Mr. Doyle?
I'd just like to convey the large number of very positive comments received from people about the COVID testing opportunities provided by the town of Milton for both residents and non-residents alike.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Doyle. And the plan is to possibly host another Sunday, the Sunday after April vacation. So students will be I believe it's April 19th is the week of April vacation. We're contemplating scheduling another one for that Sunday so that people can get tested prior to coming back into school, understanding that April vacation people will be gathering a little more often. So thank you for that. It's been a wonderful success, very coordinated effort by Transformative Healthcare, our police department, and many others in town. So glad we can offer it.
Yes, thank you. I have to note that I neglected to introduce the board, which is something that we do need to do for a number of reasons, one of which is people who perhaps don't know us or can't see the computer. So I'm Melinda Collins. I'm the chair of the board. Katie Conlon is the vice chair. Arthur Doyle is our secretary. Mr. Wells and Mr. Zulus are our members. And of course, there's Mr. Dennehy, our town administrator, and our executive administrative assistant, Hillary Waite, is with us. And we have some guests that who we will be introducing shortly. So the next item up is a letter supporting the Norfolk County 8 that actually Caroline and the Board of Health have both looked at, and they gave some feedback to try to tighten it up and make it as accurate as possible. And it's here for our consideration to send on to Governor Baker. Yes, Ms. Conlon?
Madam Chair, I'll move that we approve and sign a letter to Governor Baker regarding the vaccination clinics at the Council on Aging provided by the Board of Health.
Second.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Zulus?
Just a nit, just in case in the last line of the letter, I think we want to say collaborative. Just want to.
Oh, yes, thank you. I see it. Got it. Great catch.
We need to update the date as well.
Okay, we can do that. And could we, is it all right to use our electronic signatures, everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Before we vote, just before we vote, just
Yes.
one point before we vote, just a couple of things. Obviously, this isn't the optimal. It's a regional approach versus being a singular vaccination resource. I don't know if anyone saw Secretary Sutter's comments today. The state has received all the doses.
You've frozen.
Whatever's in the state poll, give any more vaccine.
Richard, you froze and we couldn't hear what you said. Would you mind repeating? Well, Richard, I don't know if you can hear me, but you are frozen and you've been frozen for a little bit now. Ah, there he goes. He's back. You're muted.
I forgot what I was going to say. Let's vote.
Okay.
I completely forgot.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells, Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes, excellent. Okay, so do that. And next, we'll move item 21 up. It's an application for Reverend Lisa Ward has submitted it on behalf of the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association, and it would be an event put on by MICA, the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association, a COVID-safe, masks and appropriate distancing townwide memorial service to lift up this year that we've experienced due to COVID-19. Milton Cable Access is available to offer virtual opportunities to attend as well. And let's see, it would be May 16th at 3 p.m. and the proposed end is 4:30 p.m. And they're proposing 100 attendees, and I assume they mean in person. So we have time to actually entertain this and maybe do a little more due diligence on it, but I think they were eager to get this in front of us. Does anybody have questions that they'd like answered or some comments for us to begin looking at this together? Yes, Mr. Zulus.
Has the Board of Health or the our health director weighed in on this, or maybe helpful if she takes a look at it?
Right, I think we do, because it doesn't appear that Caroline Kinsella has looked at this. So I think, Mr. Dennehy, has she?
Yeah, so she did. She spoke with Lisa Ward. There's some things they're still working out.
Okay.
Church services do not fall under any restrictions that the governor has laid out as to how many people may attend. She was going to speak to Lisa Ward and indicate this. As long as social distancing is in place and masks continue, this memorial service of hope outside the gazebo can certainly be performed, in her words.
And it does mention in the application that MICA is mindful to remain safe as advised by the health department. So the fact that they're talking means that I'm sure that Caroline will advise them well and they'll follow all of her instructions. But
Yes.
Yeah.
And both the police and fire chiefs have looked at this, and should the health department sign off on it, they'd be more than willing and able to help.
Okay. So we could vote on this, providing sign off by the health department.
I'll make a motion to approve this.
Second,
Approval by the health agent, director of public health.
second.
Thank you.
If
Yes,
I may,
Mr. Zulus?
we could just add it to, there's a conditions of approval section in the form. We can just add subject to compliance with the instructions of the town's director of health.
Mhm.
So I'll add that. I'll suggest that as a friendly amendment, Richard, that we.
I'll take that, Michael. And I accept that only that this is on town property. I mean, many of our religious institutions have been having outside services of 100 or more right along, particularly the most recently on Ash Wednesday. So yeah, I'm fine with that, Michael. I'm okay with that.
Great, thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells, Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Dennehy. And next up, we have Sheriff McDermott and also Mr. Manning of the Norfolk County Sheriff's Department. So welcome very much and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair Collins. It's a great privilege to me to come before the board tonight to just introduce/reintroduce myself to you and those that might be watching tonight. Interestingly enough, right now I'm celebrating, it was March 9th in 1995 that I decided as a young 25-year-old to run for the city council in Quincy. And the funny story was I represented Ward 3, which was Montclair, the northern part by President's Golf Course. And I started door knocking as a very ambitious young politician. And as I was door knocking around my community, I was walking down the street off of Alvin Ave and knocking on a door, and a woman that came to the door and listened to my pitch. And I said, I'd really appreciate your support in the election this fall. And she said, I'd love to vote for you, young man, but unfortunately you're in the town of Milton. So I lost my way there in East Milton a little bit. And but I've had certainly a relationship with the town for many years. So I'm honored to be here tonight to give a chance to really talk about how the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office can work hand in hand with communities like Milton to meet your particular needs. Just to give you a little background of me, I am a resident of the city of Quincy. I live with my wife and my 2 teenage children. I served on the Quincy City Council for 6 years back in the 90s. I became an attorney, been an attorney for 20 years. And for the last 18 years before becoming sheriff, I've served as your register of probate for Norfolk County at the Probate and Family Court in Canton, focusing on access to justice issues for residents who have family law crisis issues. I've been very much involved with the communities throughout Norfolk County over the course of my career. And I welcome this new opportunity to serve as sheriff to bring a new perspective on public safety to the sheriff's office and to the town of Milton. My mission as your sheriff is to make sure that the sheriff's office serves as a public safety resource for Milton and all of the 28 communities throughout Norfolk County. As you know from the past year, it's time to, we've had a time to reflect on what the term public safety is all about. I want to push past that limited understanding that many people have about the jail, of that we simply are putting criminals in jail and we have the care and custody, which is a primary role. But I want to expand that to include a very proactive approach to improving the conditions that make residents feel safer, and also to help those residents who might otherwise go down the wrong path make better choices and decisions. One of the ways that we're doing this in the sheriff's office is to expand our programming and our community outreach. We're opening up opportunities for residents to make use, now that COVID is kind of opening up the opportunity, for the ropes course, our leadership academy in Braintree, with our youth services programming. We are going to have even though COVID is now, we're getting to hopefully towards the end of it, we are still going to have a limited group for our youth camp this year. We're hoping to maximize as much as we can, and we're working with public health officials just to make sure that everybody remains safe. But we want to focus primarily on at-risk populations, which includes many of our juveniles in our communities. My relationship with the trial court and the Norfolk County Juvenile Court, as well as with the district courts, will help me foster those relationships so that we can identify where those at-risk populations are. We're looking to actively increase participation in our senior programming, including the life-saving Are You OK program. It's one of the greatest programs that was started many years ago under Sheriff Bellotti. I'm blessed to have inherited a great program. And we've seen the benefits of having 3 lives saved in the past couple of months. The third one was just yesterday, I believe. A 99-year-old woman who did not respond to Deputy Sheriff's phone call we immediately called for local law enforcement, first responders, and the woman's family to respond, and we did find her on their bathroom floor. From what I hear, she's okay, but thank God we had the program in place because we were able to alert first responders to respond. So that's a great program, and we're looking basically to expand it. I was surprised to learn that how few, unfortunately, we have less than 300, I think, people on our list. We should have 3,000 people on our list, and we have more than enough capacity to do that. So we're looking to expand that to make sure that every resident who may need that service is given the opportunity to sign up. We're looking to also put that into multiple languages, because as I traveled across the county last year, I was amazed at how many different ethnicities we have. We have a very diverse county, and to make sure that we reach everybody, we want to make sure that our programming is in multiple languages so that we can enhance those programs to serve more people. I want to continue to make our security resources at the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office available to communities like Milton when needed, including our mobile command center, our K-9 units, and we want to emphasize our vital strategic partnerships with programs like MetroLink. And I know Chief Wells certainly knows the value of those partnerships over the years. Our programming is not just about stopping crime, but it's also about making sure that every resident in Norfolk County feels safe. And this includes feeling safe from criminal behavior, but also feeling safe from other challenges that affect us, including what we're dealing with right now, the health pandemic of COVID-19, climate change issues that continuously creep up, social isolation that goes on in our communities, opioid and alcohol addiction, systemic racism, and many, many more issues. These threats don't simply stop at the town borders. So we need to work together to tackle all these issues head on and regionally. At the same time, though, each community experiences these problems in unique ways. Because of this, no one-size-fits-all approach will work for every town. My office is uniquely situated to help coordinate responses to public safety challenges across the county. But this coordination will only be successful if it's guided by the experiences and needs of each community. So as sheriff, I'm looking to work closely with the town of Milton to make sure that we are meeting your town's specific needs. We have the opportunity to make those lasting positive changes in our county, and partnering with towns like Milton is the first step in making that happen. Through those continued partnerships with the Milton Select Board, local public safety officials, human service agencies, such as our veterans organizations, our schools, our councils on aging, we can work together to tailor a public safety efforts to work what's best for Milton. So I want to just basically say thank you for the opportunity to reintroduce myself to you in this new role as sheriff. I look forward to continuing the partnership that the sheriff's office has had with the town of Milton and Norfolk County for many, many years. And I said to my command staff today, I do have a chip on my shoulder that constantly wants to make sure that we're the best in the business. I made that a goal for the Norfolk County Probate Court, and we had a pretty stellar reputation. And I intend to make sure that Norfolk County Sheriff's Office continues to move in the right direction and continues to thrive on your behalf. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or certainly take any feedback. You introduced Dan Manning tonight. Dan is my Director of External Affairs, and he'll be directly working with the towns to make sure all of your needs are met that we can. So I thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. Do members have questions? Comments? No? Okay. Well, we very much look forward to continuing to work with the sheriff's office and a new partnership with the two of you. It's great. I understand that you have that personal connection with Mr. Dennehy as well. So we're already off to a good start.
You can't escape the BC High contingency.
Yeah, Mr. Manning has already been out to visit the town. He sat with Chief King briefly and then made his way up to Randolph Avenue to check out some of the assets parked up there in the garage. So he's familiarizing himself with Milton, and I appreciate that, Sheriff.
And I want to say thank you to the town of Milton. I know that our some of our vehicles certainly parked there in the facility, and I want to very much thank the foundation that's hosting us there. We've been out, I think, at least 2 or 3 times since I've been sheriff on various calls, and it's a perfect location for the deployment of that team. So I appreciate it. As long as we can be there, I greatly appreciate it on behalf of the office.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wells, did you?
I just want to thank the sheriff
Okay.
and Mr. Manning for coming in and
You're going in and out a little bit.
All right, thank you, Sheriff. Thank you very much for coming in. I'm good, Madam Chair. I'm gonna change back to my computer.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing everybody in person soon.
Yes. And let me see. Oh, good. Excuse me. Our new town engineer, Marina Fernandez, is here with us. And hello and welcome. You're muted, just in case. Mr. Dennehy, would you like to give us the board an introduction?
Sure. Yeah. So as this board knows, Marina's predecessor, John Thompson, moved on to Braintree after, I believe, 18 or 19 years with the town of Milton. Ms. Fernandez comes in with a wealth of information and experience in this field, having worked in the private sector, but worked with several communities and municipalities. She comes very highly recommended from the command staff in Quincy. And she has literally jumped right into this role. She has some very unique stuff that she's like to get rolling in town. Obviously, she's coming in with some pretty large construction projects ongoing. So I'm very, very excited to introduce Marina Fernandez, town engineer, to the Milton Select Board.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Chair. So my name is Marina Fernandez. I'm the new town engineer and also very local to the community. I grew up just next door in Quincy, and I went to UMass Amherst and UMass Dartmouth for both my undergrad and grad work. And I have been in the field for about 15 years, working for consultants and working very closely with many communities, such as the city of Austin, the city of Quincy. I have done a lot of work with the city of Revere, and the city of Portland, Maine. My work was focused around New England. So I'm very excited to be in the town of Milton. I've said this before, I'm pleasantly surprised. You have not disappointed, Milton. You have not. There's a lot of work out here. I'm very excited to be involved. And I feel like I am being able to make a difference with my background, as well as being able to pull the rich amount of information that's already within the department with the DPW, as well as working with inter-offices, inter-department, so working very closely with the building department and planning, and also reaching out to community members. I have already been stepping out in the field, talking to some folks about some issues they have with transportation. So it's been exciting, and I want to thank you, every one of you, for the opportunity. And if you have any questions, anything that I can do, or please reach out to me, or hopefully the constituents can also reach out to me as well.
Oh, thank you very much. Do members have questions or comments? Mr. Doyle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with Mr. Dennehy's assent, I'd like to extend to Marina an opportunity to meet at some point with the Conservation Commission, considering your environmental engineering background. It's something that, if this is okay with you, I'll bring to the attention of its chair, John Cannon. I think that would be a very welcomed introduction and discussion.
Yes, I apologize. I have not reached out to you, Conservation Commission first. It's been an incredibly busy 2 weeks, but it's on the top of my agenda, obviously.
Thank you. I will speak with John then, if it's all right with Michael.
Certainly, yeah. And I will say, I know other members may have some other questions, but Marina is very engaging. So we had a question come in through the town's People GIS regarding the Brook Road diet and the shared streets and space grant application, and the work that was done down there this winter to try to slow the speed down there and try to make that corridor of Brook Road multimodal. Marina responded to the gentleman within 10 minutes. She had been on site yesterday examining the road diet and noting its pros and cons. So she dove right in, and she's on the street every day. A welcome addition to an already strong engineering department. I know Chase Berkeley has been taking her around for the grand tour. I don't know if you made it to the Chamber of Commerce luncheon yet, Marina, but I'm sure that they'd like to have you there. They meet, I think it's the first Thursday of every month, but I'm sure one of the hot topics is going to be the East Milton Deck project, which is back underway and progressing nicely. So yeah, certainly, Mr. Doyle.
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Conlon?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, Marina. It's nice to have you on board. You're coming in at a very busy time, not only with the East Milton Deck project, but also with a number of projects that have been proposed in the town under Chapter 40B of the housing laws. So, those are very large, many of them are very large projects for the town. And in addition to the planning staff and all of the other department heads looking at them, it's really important that we have the town engineer looking at a lot of the infrastructure issues as well. So whatever you can do to help Tim Serwinski with those projects, I know we'd all appreciate your effort on those. And to that point, I think following up on what Arthur said about the Conservation Commission, it might be good if you haven't already to go in and meet with the planning board at some point, because I know the planning director and the town engineer end up working together on a lot of different projects. And it would be nice for the planning board members to put a face to a name and have a chance to talk with you as well. But welcome aboard. Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, Ms. Collin. A couple of other things that are on my plate that I'm trying to I will be reaching out is to Council of Aging, as well as I know that there is also a ADDA group that is looking into disability and so I'll be reaching out to, there's a lot of opportunities here for me to reach out and let people know the work that we're doing and also help them in several ways. So yes, you'll be seeing me meeting a lot of people in the next few weeks.
Mr. Zulus?
Ms. Fernandez, I won't embarrass myself by trying to welcome you in Portuguese. But one of the issues, one of the challenges in our town, as I'm sure you know, traffic. And last year, our traffic mitigation committee, which was chaired by the former Secretary of Transportation, Jeff Mullen, put together a fairly extensive report that we need to go about implementing. And that's something that has been a little bit on hold during COVID, but that's something that I would commend to you. That certainly is going to be, I think, in my interest in trying to implement some of the proposals in that report over the next several months.
Yes, I'll be taking a look at that, and also looking at grants and how we can maximize the money that we have, and be mindful of that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I will say I was in a meeting with Bill Golden last week on storm surge, and one of your colleagues from Ty and Bond was there and said that you're missed very much, and noted how lucky we are to have you. And of course, you're way up to speed on all these issues of sea level rise and storm surge. So.
Yes, I just because you mentioned, thank you so much. I have a very diverse background, so even though I do environmental, I have done a lot of years in utilities, but also I have been lucky to also work on climate change and storm resilience. And I helped the city of Quincy in 2018 after Storm Riley to review, assess all of their seawalls, and also perform the work. It was about $2 million worth of work through the FEMA grant, through the FEMA process, but most importantly, do all of that work within the authorized Governor Baker's state of declaration, which was only 45 days at the time. So that's also where my background is, storm resilience. And although we're not as coastal, obviously, as Quincy, but that's also something I have in my background.
Thank you. No, we don't have as much coast, but what we have is very dear to us and needs to be protected too, in my opinion. But thank you very much for joining us. It was lovely. I'm sure that you've had a very busy 2 weeks, so for you to take the time to be with us this evening is appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Hey, Marina.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
One thing, if I might as well, Marina has already taken advantage of our regional connections. So she has connections with Quincy. She reached out to me last week, and we made a connection to one of my Boston partners. So understanding the regional approach to traffic and all things utilities and public works. So I really appreciate that and look forward to working with Marina.
Thank you, Mr. Dennehy.
If she goes back to her old, if she goes back to her old job, it's going to be your fault, Madam Chair. Just telling you.
I'll try to be good. Thank you.
Let's let this poor woman go home.
Yes. Take care.
Thank you.
Let's see. Here we are at number 7. And our town moderator, Mr. Hiss, has joined us to request a virtual town meeting for annual town meeting on May 3rd. Good evening, and thank you for taking the time to join us, Mr. Hiss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to be here. So just some summaries. I think, as you know, although things are looking potentially better than they have in the past year, as we sit here today with almost 2 months between now and when the annual town meeting would occur, and particularly with the deadline of the printing of the warrant, I'm just unconfident that there's enough information to hope that we could return to our normal in the high school auditorium format. I've consulted with moderators across the Commonwealth, and they're all in the same position. They're really going to continue with the same approach they have been following for the past year. So the RTMs, the representative town meetings like ourselves, are going to continue with the remote. And the open town meetings are going to try to push into the summer as much as they can and have open town, outdoor meetings like they did in the past. So they're going to re-execute their plan. So I considered, should we try to move outdoors or go into the high school auditorium, and had a couple thoughts. One, I'm hoping this is the last remote we'll have to execute. By the time we get to let's say a November meeting, things will have opened up by the governor and we can return to our normal in-house status. And I was reluctant to go through all the effort and expense of trying to plan, rent the chairs, set up the team, get all the microphones, get all the cleaning of the equipment that I've seen my fellow moderators have to do in order to move into an in-person venue that complies with the requirements. And the fact that we've now conducted, are we at 3 of these things? I think 4 at this point. 4 at this point, I think. I think that the team is able to execute this, and we've been able to get high participation with easy quorum. So my recommendation is let's make this the 5th one in a row, hopefully the last one we have to follow this protocol. So that's my advice to the select board tonight.
Thank you for the background. I think that's very helpful for everyone. Do members have questions or comments? Ms. Conlon?
I think, Bob, that your suggestion makes sense. I mean, initially I had been hoping we might be able to use the field house at the high school and just set up chairs and have it indoors, but have it large enough that it's bigger than the auditorium where we can spread everybody out. But I think what you've said about the cost and what the other communities are doing makes sense. Just to put on the table, I mean, my concern continues to be that we have a lot more articles at the annual meeting than we do at the special meetings. Last year, we had the budget dominate the June meeting, and then we put other articles off until July. We have about a dozen articles that are non-budget articles, including a planning board article on accessory dwelling units that I think will generate a fair amount of discussion. Some of our articles might generate that as well, including the budget. So it's, there are challenges for boards and committees as well as town meeting members in virtual meetings. So I hope you're right that this is going to be the last time that we'll need to do this virtually, but I think the number of articles going in May is going to present some challenges, possibly in terms of getting a quorum on a subsequent night if we're into night 4, 5, or 6. But that's more of an issue for us in terms of the number of articles that go forward.
Right. Yeah, my view, I mean, we're able to conduct the town's business when we execute these virtual town meetings. I think we do lose a fair amount in not having the face-to-face communication and people literally standing up in front of their neighbors. So I hope to be able to return to that soon. In terms of numbers, on the first night, we've been able to get about 230 participants in the participant section of the Zoom webinar. I think we have maybe another dozen or so, maybe 20 who were panelists, folks like yourselves. So if you add that up, I can check with the clerk, but we're probably at 250 town meeting members the first night. By the time we get to 11 p.m., the numbers are down substantially. We're probably at the 210. We still have quorum, but it drops off. The second night, it drops by about 20 on the virtual town meetings we've held. So we're able to maintain quorum, but it does drop off. Now, the clerk will tell you that happens in our high school in-person town meetings as well. Monday night is the highest, then it drops off the Tuesday and the Thursday, et cetera. But you're right, 5 nights of virtual might be a lot of screen time if we get those intensive planning board articles. I also should note we probably have 30 members who are consistently not attending any of the virtual town meetings. For some reason, the user interface or something, despite outreach, robocalls, emails, they are not even registering, let alone attending. And they are people who I know, we've done some analysis, have attended the in-house, in the auditorium meetings before. So we'll get, I think, our typical crowd back if we hold these in the fall in the high school auditorium.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Doyle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bob, I'd just like to recognize the gratitude so many people have expressed with the high quality with which the virtual town meetings have been conducted. Your leadership, the town clerk, Milton Access TV, and the other members of the team who have made it possible. There have been several inquiries about how the May town meeting will be conducted. And I think what you have explained, being early communicated, will be very well received, so that people know well in advance what the lay of the land is going to be for the annual town meeting. So again, congratulations, and we're here to support in any way that we can, if I may say so, Madam Chair.
Of course.
Well, thank you. This is a much more complex endeavor because it takes more players to pull off these virtuals than it does the in-person. So it's Mike Lynch. It was Frank Schroth and his committee. It's Rob Mallet of IT. It is Hillary Waite. It's the town clerk's office. It is the school loaning PCs out. It's the Council on Aging opening up the doors for folks that have no PCs. It's the help desk of the library. It's a lot more moving parts on these virtuals, ironically, than in person.
That is ironic. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question or comment? No? Mr. Zulus, I see you've unmuted.
No, I was just going to make the motion.
Excellent.
If we're ready to go, I'll move that the town of Milton conduct a remote town meeting in conformance with the requirements set forth in Section 8 of Chapter 92 of the Acts of 2020, signed by Governor Baker on June 5th, 2020.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. And thank you again for joining us, Mr. Hiss. And as Mr. Doyle said, all of your excellent work and all those supporting us.
Thank you for having me. I'll let you carry on. Good night.
Oh, well, thank you. Mr. Dennehy has one thing to say. Maybe to
I would
you.
also thank the moderator on behalf of myself and my wife, who's a town meeting member, for the excellent work to put this stuff together. And I'm actually contemplating to see if, very much like Katie Couric, if Mr. Hiss could host Jeopardy one night with that eloquent voice and standing power that he has, standing up for 4 hours straight. But no, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Really appreciate it.
And sharp wit as well.
Correct.
Well, I will look into that. So they haven't called, surprisingly. We're anxiously waiting by the phone. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Good
Bob.
night. Thank
Bye.
you.
Excellent. And we've been joined by our assistant planner, Allison Quinn. Wonderful to have you here this evening. We are looking at a technical assistance proposal to the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, more affectionately known as MEPC, for reinvigorating our Fair Housing Committee. This is very exciting. So,
thank you, Madam Chair and Select Board members. I'm actually presenting this on behalf of Tim. I thought I'd give him a night off from having to attend hearings. So I'm going to read a memo that he prepared for you guys. This memo is meant to provide some additional context to the March 10th, the Fair Housing Committee was formed in 1978, and as far as I can tell, its charge has not changed since then. The committee, as it stands, meets infrequently. As the town's appointed fair housing officer, I feel it is important that the committee have a clear idea of its roles and responsibilities. Given the level of interest my office has seen in the past few months from residents seeking to fill vacancies on the committee, I feel that now is a good time to reevaluate the role of the Fair Housing Committee and its place in the ecosystem of town boards and committees with the Housing Commission. This project proposal seeks assistance from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council through its annual technical assistance program to research best practices from fair housing committees in other towns in the region and develop recommendations for the future of Milton's Fair Housing Committee. Any recommendations to come out of this project would be subject to the consideration, review, and approval of the Select Board. MAPC gives more weight to proposals with demonstrated municipal support My request is that the select board vote to support this proposal and authorize the town administrator to sign it prior to submission.
Thank you. Do members have any questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Conlon?
Madam Chair, just a typo on page 2 under community engagement. We should just refer to the Select Board Housing Committee rather than Subcommittee.
Right.
To get its accurate, its full name. Otherwise, I'm happy to make the motion. If there's,
Thank you.
so I'll move that we support and approve the application to the Metropolitan Area Planning Council for technical assistance related to reinvigorating Milton's Fair Housing Committee and to authorize the town administrator to sign the application.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening, Ms. Quinn.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay. And so item 9, the application to Massachusetts Dredging Grant Program. This is going to be deferred, and the application is being worked on by a combination of engineering, DPW, and planning. And Ms. Quinn's still with us. I don't know if you'd like to speak to this or if you'd just like me to defer.
No, I'm happy to address that. Thank you. So this grant round came out probably about a month ago. We've been working collaboratively between MIPC and Milton Landing to look at opportunities to invigorate Milton Village and Milton Wharf. We know that space down in the area where the dock is hasn't been dredged since 1983, and it is it's an area of critical environmental concern. We're supposed to maintain it at 6 feet. This grant came up, and we've been working with Childs to identify what our dredging opportunities look like. They're costly. Unfortunately, we're not in a place where this is ready to move forward. There's quite a few permits that are required. There's some upfront work. We need to secure some matching grants, and we didn't feel it was appropriate to submit something that wasn't fully baked. It's, as someone who works for the town, we want to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward. So we're going to take the next year to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row, to secure all our permits, and work closely with Childs to put forward the best application that we. And that's it. That's
Wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Well, I think we all appreciate knowing, though, that this is in the works, and I'm sure that residents do too. So does anyone have a question or a comment, even though there's more to come? Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Allison. As Allison knows, I did want her to speak to this tonight. As the members know, the Ponce River Basin is a beautiful natural habitat of both water and not recreational, but also native wildlife that live there. The town has been dredging there since 1956 was our first dredge. And Allison's correct. We were approved and supposed to maintain a channel between there and the Royce Smith Bridge actually the Grand Ave Bridge is 6 feet. So I think that Allison and I talked again today. I think pulling that back and spending the next year, having this ready to go in, say, next March, because this would be a July 1 start date, is probably a good idea. She and I both had several conversations with Childs. As Allison knows, and sometimes we're only 6 inches there, never mind 6 feet. So I thank her for this. I do want to mention that both, and I think this is important, many people don't realize, they look at the river, they say Milton, one half of that is ours, one half is the city of Boston. And Allison's work on this, both the city of Boston and DCR, strongly support what we're doing, what we want to do there in making this more accessible and bring back the ability. I don't know if any of you saw the report today on eagles in Massachusetts, that Massachusetts is now home to 600 bald eagles, a species which was almost extinct 10 years ago. And for those of you who don't know, many do know, as Mr. Dennehy knows, because he sees them on a daily basis. Our town, our Neponset Basin is home to 3. One that is the child of 2 parents, or I don't know if you call it the child, it's second generation bald eagle, Milton. And I have to say, if you'd have told me that 10 years ago, I would have said no way, but it just goes to show how special that place is. So I thank Alice. I do think, I'm confident that we had to move quick this time, but I'm confident that by next March, we'll be ready to have a very good application set forth.
And don't forget the seal in Milton Landing.
He's actually an annual visitor. He comes back every winter.
Right.
And here's the test for Arthur Doyle. What's he feeding on, Arthur?
Oh, your favorite fish, the smelt.
Oh, you got it.
Great, thank you.
Well, thank you again for your time, and we'll get this application ready for next year.
Yes, it's just great. Thank you so much.
Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you, Allison. Good night.
Thanks,
Good night.
Allison.
So I don't know. I know that Town Council Kevin Freitag is also, oh, here he is. He's attending warrant committee, but you're here. Good evening, Mr. Freitag. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Especially because I realize now that we probably could have moved this to the end of the meeting, which would have been better for you. But it's the fire station construction and building appropriation ballot question.
Madam Chair, I think out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to recuse myself on this just because it relates to a bonding project. And
Yes.
so I'm going to step out and I'll come back when you move on to the next item.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Conlon. So duly noted. Let's just see. So, Mr. Freitag, would you care to just give us a little background? And I had also asked for clarification on comments on ballot questions that he very kindly answered today.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair. Kevin Freitag, Office of Town Council. What you have before you is the ballot question that is a part of the second part of a process that began at our recent town meeting, whereby the town did approve an article that would authorize the town to borrow or raise funds in order to construct and equip 3 new fire stations in Milton. The next step is to go to the voters in Milton and to ask them to exempt the debt from Proposition 2.5. It's a critical vote. If the vote fails, then the project basically has to restart. We need to go back and start over with another article at town meeting. The form of this question is prescribed very strictly by the statute, Chapter 59 in the Mass General Laws. It needs to be worded essentially just as it is. The only bit of leeway that we have is a description of exactly what the amount is going to be used for, which has been included here, specifically to construct and equip a new fire headquarters and 2 new fire substations. There was, this, by the way, has been, was drafted by my office, vetted and approved already by bond counsel, and also shared with Michelle Tassinari at the Department of State Elections today. She also suggested that it was in good form. The second question that we posed to, or really the question that we posed to the State Department of Elections today, was whether or not there could be an inclusion of any comment on this article in somewhat the same way that there was a an explanation included on the voter referendum regarding community preservation? The answer to the question is no. A comment cannot be included with this particular ballot question, and that's a result of restrictions that are in place in Chapter 59 of the general laws. I would just point out, though, that the select board is free to discuss this ballot question. The select board can actually take a vote on whether or not it supports the ballot question and a yes or a no vote on the ballot question. The select board can also make available on the town's website a link that would take those who choose to look at it additional information regarding this ballot question. I stress that it needs to be a link only to information rather than any sort of advocacy type of piece. That's the communication and follow-up that I had today with the Office of Campaign Finance. Sort of went over exactly what the town can do in terms of providing additional information so that this question doesn't simply appear in a vacuum when the voters look at it in the election in April. And I can discuss that more with the board at another time in terms of exactly what the options are in terms of putting out additional information. But that, I think, is sort of a good summary of the ballot question. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Freitag. Does anyone have any questions? No, I don't either. That was very clear. Thank you. So we do have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve. Go ahead, Michael, you can do
No,
it.
you-
You got it in front of you. No, go ahead.
I'll move to approve the fire station construction and building appropriation ballot question as written and submit the question to the town clerk's office for the April 27th election.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr.
One question,
Zulus?
Madam. I'll come back. Go ahead, keep going.
Okay. Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes, and Ms. Conlon is recused. Yes.
One
Mr. Wells?
question. So according to what town council just said, we as a board could at some point, anytime between now and the election, take a vote to support this question, correct?
Yeah, yes, I think that's what you were
Okay.
saying.
Okay. thank you.
And in a way, we really already have since we went to town meeting and supported it as a board. But the voters, the larger, universe of voters may not know that. So that was helpful. Thank you. And I think too, maybe as we discuss this going forward, to know what the fire station building committee can do as well, because I know that they're trying to put together an educational campaign. We'd like them to make sure that they also adhere to whatever the rules are around that. Thank you.
Well, I know they're looking at this as a pack, this is an override vote, correct? This is basically what it is. So this would be this, am I correct? The same rules and criteria would apply to this as would any operational override that we've had in the past in town, correct?
That's right. Generally speaking, you cannot use town resources to advocate for one position or another on a ballot question. That's the general rule.
Right.
But strategic,
But the fire station building committee, that doesn't apply to them, I guess is my.
No, that would apply to them. The groups that it does not, the groups that would not apply to would be friends of the fill in the blank. If it was a private group, and oftentimes that does happen along these questions,
Yes.
they would still need to register with the town clerk as a group that was endorsing a position on a political question on the ballot, but they wouldn't be under the same type of restrictions that are placed on town employees and appointed officials.
Thank you.
they're very aware of that, Madam Chair. They know that. Brian and Dan both are aware of that, so. It might be strategically, it might not be a bad idea, like as we get closer to the election, to consider putting this on the, putting it on the agenda and taking a formal vote to support it,
Mhm.
just as a strategic move.
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Doyle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for Kevin. Informational for me. The version I have reads, shall the town of Milton be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2 and 1/2, comma, one so-called, comma, the amount. Can you help me with that one so-called?
Actually, I think that's a great point. I think, Arthur, that's a typo. It should just say Proposition 1.5, comma, so-called, comma. The one should come.
Yeah.
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Doyle. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Freitag. I realize that we have you very far down on the agenda for a little later. Sorry about that.
That's not a problem, Madam Chair. And I believe, I can't tell if Bob Bushway is on the call, but he and I just left Warrant Committee, and he and I are both available to discuss either the citizens petition or the two tax articles that have been proposed by the Warrant Committee. The Warrant Committee just voted and approved recommendations on the two tax articles that are up to be included into the warrant. So,
Okay. Well, does let's see. Yes, he is here. Does anyone have any objections to moving the discussion of articles up? Ms. Conlon?
Madam Chair, I don't have an objection, but I would also like to suggest that Mr. Doherty has been here for over an hour, and
Oh,
I don't think the items 13 and 14 will be, I think they'll be very quick. So
Right.
I think we can do that either before or after we handle the matter for Mr. Freitag and Mr. Bushway, before we get into the budget, which could be a longer discussion.
right.
make
I
some
think
sense.
it will be. Thank you for making that point, and my apologies to Mr. Doherty. Well, yes, since Mr. Bushway is here and Mr. Freitag are here, let's just do those two, and then we'll welcome Mr. Doherty in. I do apologize for that. Welcome, Mr. Bushway, and so we're going to move down to item 15 and look at two articles from the Board of Assessors. Mr. Bushway, if you would like to brief the board on these articles.
Sure. Good evening, Madam Chair, Board of Select Board, Bob Bushway, Chief Appraiser. As Kevin mentioned, we just left the Warrant Committee, and they both the committee voted to move these two articles forward. The first being, actually, they're both companion articles, and they both deal with incentivizing the tax deferral program that we have currently in place. What this first article does, it's a home rule petition, and it will increase the income guidelines. So hopefully more seniors will take advantage of it. More seniors will qualify for the tax deferral. Currently, it's a little over $57,000. And what this petition would do is increase it to currently $92,000, which is tied to the state tax circuit breaker, which is many people take advantage of on their income taxes, and that's adjusted on an annual basis. So it's an increase of about 60% on a person's how much they can make and still qualify to defer their property taxes. So the Board of Assessors is anxious to see more people participate in this program, and I think this is one way of accomplishing that. So that's what this first article does.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on this first article? No. Okay. Would you care to just cover the companion article to that, the lowering the interest rate?
Yes, sure. Thank you. So the second article also deals with property tax deferrals, which, so one piece of the puzzle is the income guidelines. And then we had to have a second article that addressed what the repayment of deferred taxes are. And currently it's at 8%, and that's tied to Chapter 59, Section 5 on the state code. But many cities and towns, especially recently, have voted to reduce the interest from 8% to a lower amount. And this evening, the Board of Assessors voted to suggest an interest rate of 4%. So basically cutting it in half, they felt was a good place to put it. It certainly, hopefully, will incentivize more seniors to take advantage of the program without lowering it too much, because interest rates tend to fluctuate. So that's what this second article will do. Hopefully, get more seniors involved in the tax deferral program, and so that's the second article.
Thank you very much. Do members have questions on the interest rate article?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I might,
Lois?
I just want to congratulate and thank the Board of Assessors for doing this, because one of the striking statistics that we've seen over the last year in Milton is the increase in poverty among seniors that occurred for the period, I believe it, between 2014, 2017. It was a striking increase in the number of seniors in poverty for the last period for which we have statistics. And so anything we can do to lighten the load for seniors is very important. And so I'm very encouraged by this, and thank the Board of Assessors for making this happen.
Thank you. I do realize also there was a citizens petition to exempt seniors from overrides. And I don't know, Mr. Freitag, if because it's a similar article, if you would like to give us some background on this article, and
Yes, thank you.
It might work. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kevin Freitag for the Office of Town Council. I'll try to be brief on this. This was a citizen's petition that was delivered to the clerk's office. It does deal with taxes. I've reviewed the article. I've also discussed it with my contact at the Division of Local Services at the Department of Revenue, and their opinion is the same as mine, which is that the citizen's petition, while it must go onto the warrant pursuant to General Laws 39, Section 10, it does impermissibly invade the exclusive jurisdiction of the state legislature to set taxes. And it does so by way of what appears to just be sort of a local action. In other words, this isn't the citizen's petition asking the state legislature to pass a special act, which is coincidentally what we are doing in that first article that Bob presented. We're asking them to increase the income limits. This isn't that. It seeks to do by local action what can only be done by a home rule petition, and therefore it seems to me that it's unconstitutional as drafted. It's not permissible. Even if town meeting were to approve it, it would need to go through the AG's office and need to be approved as essentially a new bylaw, and it is extremely unlikely, in my opinion. It is not likely at all that the AG's office would approve it, given that they likely would, frankly, make the same call I did to DLS and have the same discussion I did and conclude that it is not within the town's right to do it in the manner that this article prescribes.
Great. Thank you very much. And for that reason, I'm very happy that the Board of Assessors brought back this article to raise the income threshold for seniors on real property. And just to explain a little bit, although Mr. Bushway, if I go wrong, just let me know, please. But so seniors can defer paying some property taxes, and the interest rate that would be applied to those deferrals is 4%. And then when the property is sold, then that deferral is then paid back to the town. So that gives people relief while they're in their homes, keeps them in their homes, and I think can achieve what the citizens petition, partly was hoping to achieve, helping people stay in their home. So appreciate it. Mr. Zulus?
The only thing I'd say is on the citizens petition, I think the goal is a worthy one. It is something, as Kevin pointed out, that needs to be done and can only be done by the legislature. There have been proposals and proposed legislation in the past to exempt seniors, or to allow localities to exempt seniors from Proposition 2.5 overrides. And those proposals and bills have always failed in the legislature. So perhaps with a new legislature at some point, the legislature will allow localities to exempt seniors for Proposition 2.5 overrides. But right now, that's something that is with the legislature. And hopefully, if that legislation comes up again, it'll be dealt with more favorably than it has in the past.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Conlon.
Chair, procedurally, since we've discussed 2 items under 15 and 1 under 16, do you want to vote Article 15 to include these articles now, or do you want to hold that for later in the meeting?
Well, we haven't discussed.
I'm happy to make the motion if you.
The petition on trash barrels, but I'm happy to entertain the motion if no one else has any objection. Move away.
Just with respect to trash barrels, it's not even clear to me that this isn't proper form to be an article. It's not really seeking to do anything. So I'd like us to have someone in the office call the lead proponent and see whether these proponents would like to withdraw this, just to give them an opportunity to do that. They're all on the same street. I think this could be easy for them to look at and see if they might want to withdraw it before the deadline. But the way it's worded is, it's not really asking a meeting to do anything. So in my view, so I'll move that we include in the warrant 2 articles from the Board of Assessors. One is to raise the income threshold for senior real property tax deferments, and the second to reduce the interest rate for senior real tax property deferments, and to include the citizens petition regarding trash barrels. So, and just ask as an aside that the office contact the proponent.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. So, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Bushway, Mr. Freitag. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Hillary, if you could promote Mr. Doherty, who's been so very patient. Thank you again. That's not the first time that's happened. Good evening, Mr. Doherty.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for joining us and for your patience.
Well, not at all. It's interesting every time I see the variety and depth of what you do. I mean, think about that. And thanks. So a few weeks ago, we talked about the comment that would be submitted in connection with the FAA's neighborhood environmental survey. And then at that point, Madam Chair, you had suggested to wait and see whether or not there were any additional thoughts. And so we are here today. I can recap the basic point of the comment. Actually, it's twofold. One is to state very clearly and in a focused way that the NES, Neighborhood Environmental Survey, is an opportunity and a signal that FAA needs to change its policy on the use of DNL, the yearly average DNL metric. And then second, it's also, as it relates to Milton in particular, a reminder that for that reason also, that the metric itself is under review. There's really no reason, once again, or this is an additional reason, why the FAA should not be proceeding with the 4L environmental assessment at this time. So those were the 2 points in a focused way to make those points.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Do members have comments or questions for Mr. Doherty? No?
Very straightforward.
Thank you. Well, excellent. I will then entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve a comment letter. I think that's the right, that's the
Item
other-
14.
the second one is
Right.
when we're talking about. So I'll move that we approve a comment letter on the Logan Airport. I think it's just the FAA's Neighborhood Environmental Survey. It's not Logan Airport. I'll move that we approve a letter of comment on the FAA's Neighborhood Environmental Survey and authorize the board's electronic signatures to be used in submitting the letter.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Doherty.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Since we're on airplane matters, shall we just back up to 13? And we're jumping around. This is interesting. And talk about the Logan Airport, and it's not Logan, it's FAA, environmental data report. The letter, the comment letter that we received. And actually this was a second draft, I believe. So I think, Ms. Conlon.
So Madam Chair, one of our town attorneys, Karis North, prepared this draft for us. It's a comment on the 2018-2019 environmental data report for Logan Airport. We've filed over the years a number of comment letters regarding environmental data reports. So this letter summarizes a lot of the same arguments we've made in prior letters, but it also brings into the letter the point about the neighborhood environmental survey that we just discussed with Mr. Doherty, and that's incorporated under section 3. So thank you to Karis North for all of her efforts on the letter, and I think it's a good draft and one that we could act on. The deadline is this week, so we should try to get this in and act on it tonight and get this in by the deadline. I believe it's on Friday.
I believe it is as well. There's just one thing on the CCs at the end. It's now State Representative Randy Fluker Oakley. So that's, we want to make sure that that is corrected. And I think that was the last thing that I thought this was, as usual, Karis North produced something that was clear and readable, and also had very good points, and I always appreciate how she traces history. So I think I may have had one question. Oh, yeah, so I just may be misreading this, but let's see, so it's 1, 2, 3. On the 4th page under number 4, the bullet or the heading increased nighttime operations. I'm probably misreading it, but the second sentence says nighttime operations increased by 15% from 2016 to 2017, and despite the pandemic, increased again by another 5.1% from 2018 to 2019. So it's just the dates are throwing me off or something.
Pandemic didn't start until 2020.
Right. And so I'm just a little concerned that there's, and I have to admit, I didn't have time to look up the table.
I think, Madam Chair, I think the EDR included some data from the pandemic timeframe, even though it's the 2018-19 EDR. So we'll have to just check that table that she's referencing, table 6.4.
Okay, yeah, no, I remembered that because I read it a while ago. I remembered that it did have some pandemic data, but I was just a little confused if those were the right dates or not. That's all. Thank you. I'll make a note myself to follow. So may I have a motion to approve the letter?
I'll move that we approve a comment letter on the Logan Airport Environmental Data Report for 2018, 2019, and authorize the board to use its electronic signatures to submit the letter.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes, yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Thank you. Let's see. Just want to make sure we're not missing anything. Okay. I believe we are back at item number 11, the FY22 budget. Mr. Dennehy, I know you and Karen Preval and our finance committee have been working very hard on this. So
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of this board. If I might start this discussion, first and foremost, I really want to thank each of the members of this select board who are here tonight, especially Vice Chair Katie Conlon and member Zulus, Mike Zulus, who have been with myself and the accounting team and the department heads throughout this process. And I'd also like to thank the collective team at Town Hall for the countless re-examinations of department line items, revenue numbers, group insurance, general insurance. We've pretty much turned over every stone we can to help further this financial balancing act. The perseverance during these unprecedented times and quite honestly, continually revenue restricted times in our town. I greatly appreciate all your help with this. For the public, I just want them to know what a comprehensive process this has been. It's included 8 joint finance subcommittee meetings and a multitude of departmental meetings where we revisited budgets, talked to the chief appraiser Bob Bushway on several occasions about new growth and overlay, the town treasurer collector about some estimates about excise tax, Chase Berkeley and some of the other revenue sources in town, Joe Prondak and the building inspector. So I just want the public to know what a comprehensive process it has been to get to this point. I will start this discussion tonight in my report to balance the budget by referencing some thoughts from last year's annual town meeting and special town meeting in December. For those of you that remember, town meeting approved the utilization of $1 million worth of stabilization money, which is the town's rainy day fund. In December, town meeting approved the replacement of 3/4 of that. We need to complete that journey, right? There is still $250,000 of stabilization that, in my mind, needs to go back into that rainy day fund. Having said that, I firmly believe that the pandemic is still very relevant, and it's still raining. And therefore, I'll get to it later, but I will recommend the use of another $750,000 of the stabilization fund to offset some of our needs for FY22. In a conversation with the town treasurer, Jim McAuliffe, yesterday, he confirmed to me that the stabilization fund now sits at a little over 4.66 million. Let me stress now that the combination of this 250,000 that was not replenished last year and the 750,000 ask that I will make this evening, I think that needs to be returned and made whole as soon as possible. The $750,000 ask from stabilization tonight is approximately 16% of the current balance. And I'm confident that the $3.9 million left in the stabilization fund puts the town in a safe enough place. I won't go through everything that we discussed, But I will, some of the highlights of my my balancing act, if you will. My balanced budget includes the funding of the assistant health director. It's the only position that I suggest we fund in FY22. If you recall, this was suggested by several town meeting members at our annual town meeting. And the assistant town administrator, HR director, Paige Ippolito, who sits on the personnel board, they approved the position. And I will recommend that position be funded for FY22. Accordingly, the addition of this position will necessitate the need to add to our group insurance number. I want to thank this board again for their support of the retiree prescription carve-out, which will save the town a little over $300,000 in FY22. But the net of adding that position and the potential that a family health benefit group insurance may come from that nets that number out to, it's a $296,000 reduction to next year's budget. My balanced budget does not fund the 5 new full-time employees requested by the Milton Public Schools. And just to be clear, this is not a cut. These positions were not part of their FY21 rollover, but rather new benefit eligible positions. On the town side, we're looking at reductions of approximately $573,000. When you look at a lot of these town departments that come in lean and followed the instructions directed to them in September to present the budget that only included level service and contractual obligations or collective bargaining adjustments. Some of these numbers that I'll walk through quickly, they kind of hurt and they hit home. So the Milton Police Department reduction, first and foremost, is a reduction of $130,000 from what they submitted. This essentially requires Chief King not to fund the 2 patrolman positions created during the 2017 annual town meeting and contingent budget, which was successful in the operational override. The Milton Fire Department has presented a cut of $200,000, which is made up of overtime, training, and some salary savings from retirement turnover. Department of Public Works cut is $125,000. The IT department reduction is $37,000. Cemetery cut is $20,000. Consolidated facilities reduction is $61,000. And the library's full service budget that they submitted, if you recall, the library submitted 2 budgets this year. The full service budget was an additional $147,425. That is not part of my balanced budget. The second budget that was submitted by Director Adamczyk, which is their austerity budget, that's the number we'll be going with. Again, after factoring in the $573,000 cuts to the town side and the shared net expense reductions, the cumulative effect of this requires the Milton Public Schools to absorb the remaining 32% of the shortfall, which is $269,732. So obviously there's a lot more detail in this. Karen Praval and Lisa Kuhl and the team at Town Hall have been doing a great job revisiting these line items and turning over stones. But that is a preliminary balanced budget that I will be presenting to the warrant committee this coming Monday night. And with that, I'll take any questions or comments or observations.
Thank you, Mr. Dennehy. Does anyone have a question or a comment to start us off?
I guess, Madam Chair, I have a comment, and it's mainly for viewers and people who are watching. I think people just need to understand where we're at in the process. The special legislation that we had approved a few years ago for the town administrator requires the town administrator to present a balanced budget to our board and to the warrant committee. We've been following this process for the last few years, and since we became a 5-member board, we've had a finance committee and we've had joint finance meetings with the school finance subcommittee. And for the last 2 or 3 years, that's worked pretty well, where we've been able to achieve a consensus among the boards. And the warrant committee, by and large, accepted the recommendations that we made and really made very little change. So we had really a consensus budget among the select board, the school committee, the warrant committee, and the respective management teams. And one of the big reasons that we wanted the town administrator to present a budget to the warrant committee is because, for decades, for a very long time, before 2016, when the legislation became effective, the warrant committee drove the process. And they're a volunteer board made up of 15 people. They do a lot of hard work, but it really took any responsibility and accountability for the budget out of management and really into a volunteer board. And the sense was that management needed to have a greater voice in the process. So that's really what this proposal is. Now, because the school committee is looking at a different budget scenario than what we're looking at, we're really back in the same situation we were in for decades until a few years ago, where the warrant committee now is really going to find that this is different views of the budget are before them, and they're going to have to make a recommendation to town meeting outside of our recommendations, unless we have further discussion and we're able to come up with some kind of a compromise. And we did schedule a meeting. We heard back from Superintendent Jett that he's available Monday morning. So we're scheduling a finance meeting for Monday morning. And hopefully the school finance subcommittee members will be able to be there with us as well before the warrant committee meeting Monday night. But that's really the process that we're at. The town administrator is required to present a budget, but it's ultimately the warrant committee's budget that's going to go to town meeting. And this is going to land in their lap as of Monday night, or probably as of tomorrow when Mr. Dennehy transmits his proposal to the warrant committee. So I think it's important that we have consensus among our board if we can. We've had a lot of different opinions at the finance meetings. At some of them we've had other members of the board there who are not on the finance committee, and we've all had an opportunity to weigh in. I have some different thoughts than Mr. Dennehy does and probably than Mr. Zulus does, but I think it's important that we try to come up with a consensus. I think we're all fairly close within the ballpark of each other. We might have different views on the health position, given the deficit. We're all in agreement that the health position is critically needed, but whether we fund it or not, we might have different views on that. We've differed on how much we should tap the stabilization fund for, but I'm open to other ideas and other people's suggestions. I think the town administrator's done a good job in putting something forward, given the short timing we have left. We're going to print in a couple of weeks. And not only have we had to deal with COVID and all of the remote meetings, but the public should know we've had transition in 3 key leadership positions during the past year, which has really impacted the budget because all of those positions have a direct role with the budget. The superintendent of schools, the assistant superintendent for business, and our new town accountant finance director, Karen Preval, who's doing a wonderful job. And I had a chance to meet with her in person for the first time today. And I think she's going to be a huge asset to the town and has already contributed a lot. So there's been a lot of factors to get us to where we are now. And thank you to Mr. Dennehy for his proposal. I'm hoping that as we go through the next couple of weeks putting the warrant together, and until we get up to town meeting, we're going to have some more changes. Maybe some more state aid might become available so we can keep revisiting this and engaging in a dialogue and coming to something that might be better than what is currently before us, for everybody, for all departments. Thank you to Mr. Dennehy for all of his work.
Thank you. Mr. Zulus?
Sir?
Mr. Zulus,
Oh,
please.
okay. I'm sorry.
I thought you raised
couldn't
your
quite
hand.
hear you, Madam. Yeah, I did. I just couldn't hear you.
Okay, great.
I too want to congratulate Mr. Dennehy and his team. Just a great job, a tough job. It's not easy when you have to cut $3.6 million from a budget from departments who have demonstrated the need. It's not easy to do. And so this has been a huge task, and it's been undertaken very well, certainly very diligently. And I think we've gotten to a good place. I too have a few tweaks that I would make. Directionally, I agree with this proposal. There are a few tweaks that I would make. I'm not sure if we want to, Katie, I'm not sure if we want to discuss them now. I could suggest I have 3 tweaks that I would make, but I don't know that we need to talk about that now. It's, but we can if we want to. But I think this is a great job by Mr. Dennehy and his team, and I think it's directionally where we need to go.
I agree directionally. It is where we need to go. And I do think we're close. And I think I heard Ms. Conlon saying that it would be good for this board to have consensus coming out of this meeting ahead of the finance committee meetings Monday morning or meeting on Monday morning before warrant committee that evening.
Speaking
Yes,
as
Ms. Conlon.
one member, Madam Chair, I'm happy to hear Mr. Zulus's tweaks and see whether they might make sense. And I think the town administrator should give his thoughts on them. And we should emphasize one other point for the viewing public, which is that the stabilization fund is for emergency expenses. It's a reserve. Our bond rating agencies look at that when we go out to bond a new fire station or a new school, which is plenty to talk about. So it's something that we have to consider very seriously. And we always want to it's not something that's on the table every year during budget season. It's something we want to stay away from tapping, because even though it's at a healthy 4.6, there's a lot of other towns that have much bigger stabilization funds than we do. So it's really important that we view it as really a last resort. I just wanted to make that point for the viewing public.
Thank you. So, Mr. Zulus?
Sure. Oh,
no, Mr. Wells?
No, I'll wait till Michael goes and then I'll ask my question.
so so I agree with the proposal before us that we are not in a position to fund the $340,000 for the 5 additional school employees. This whole budget process requires balance, and there are a lot of significant cuts. Mike listed some of them. Public safety, $330,000. The library, not cuts, but things that are not part of the recommended budget. $147,000 for the library. So I agree that we're not in a position to fund 5 new employees for the schools at this stage of the process, certainly. And where I differ slightly is this proposed budget suggests an additional cut of actually a cut of $269,732 from the rollover budget, which is the existing contractual requirements of the school. And then has a $750,000 payment from the stabilization or withdrawal from the stabilization fund. I differ slightly on that. I think it's important not to have it, if we can avoid it, to try to avoid layoffs. We're trying to avoid layoffs on both the town side and the school side. And so the question is, how do you cut from the rollover budget while ensuring that there won't be layoffs? Well, the schools received 6 positions, I believe it was, in December, 6 additional positions in December, funding for 6 additional positions. 3 of those positions are not currently funded. I mean, are not currently filled, rather.
Mm-hmm.
They're not currently filled. And so the schools have told us that their positions now, each position equates to about $68,100. If you take those 3 unfilled positions at $68,100, that equals $204,300. And so that we'd be in a situation where we wouldn't be risking layoffs on the school side. We just wouldn't be filling positions that aren't currently filled. That gets us to a cut to the rollover of $204,300. Mike's cut to the rollover is $269,732. It's a delta of about $65,000. So how do we make up the $65,000? Well, I have a question about whether, since we're taking money from the stabilization fund, we can fund $18,650 in the OPEB trust fund. So I would not include that. I would not include moving money from essentially from stabilization to fund the trust fund in this circumstance. And so I would eliminate that $18,650. Then the delta comes down to about $46,000. And so I would take an additional $46,000 and change from stabilization. And so my suggestion from stabilization was the suggested budget has 750,000 from stabilization. My suggestion is 796,000 and change from stabilization. So those are the three tweaks. Lower the additional amount from the, lower the additional cut from the school rollover budget, not include the OPEB trust fund transfer from essentially the stabilization fund, and increase the stabilization fund utilization by $46,000. Again, it's as I said, it's directionally in the same, this is, in the context of this overall budget, this is not very much. I just think it's for me, it's philosophically, it's easier for me to say, look, we're not in a situation where on the town side or the school side, we're going to have any layoffs.
Madam
Ms.
Chair,
Tomlin?
at some point, I want to just respond to, just shed some light on where we got that idea for the OPEB in response to Mr. Zulis's point, but I know Richard wanted to speak, so I can defer that.
Go ahead, Katie. I can go ahead.
All right.
I'm listening before.
So just in terms of where the OPEB came from, so this afternoon, the town administrator and the town accountant and the chair and I met to just go over this spreadsheet and realized that there was nothing being proposed for the OPEB trust fund, and that for a number of years, we've been putting a small amount into that, and it's been viewed favorably by the bond rating agencies, including, and I was not part of this conversation, but the chair can speak to it, including at some of the recent calls, that that they've been not only appreciative of the fact that the 750 was returned to stabilization on very short order, but also that we've shown some good faith by putting some small amount into the OPEB trust fund. The source that we identified for that really wasn't the stabilization fund. If you look at the general government line, where the most recent reduction is 38,650, that 18,650 of that is from general government because it's under the inspectional services department. They were able to because of equipment they purchased this year, they don't need that 18,650 for next year. So we thought that redirecting it to show a very small amount going into OPEB would continue to build the faith with the bond rating agencies, knowing we've got fire and school and just other capital projects going out to be borrowed in the not too distant future. So that was the genesis of the discussion with it. And in talking with Karen Preval and Mike Dennehy, we all felt that it was important to maintain something into OPEB. We differed a little bit on the amount at first, but we thought it should be a small amount, not what we've done in the last few years, which was small in comparison to the liabilities around $50,000 or $100,000, but just some little bit to show some good faith. So the source of it is really the inspectional services budget.
And if I could just very quickly, I understand the identified source, but in my mind, if you're taking $750,000 or more, or $750,000 from stabilization, that's where you're funding it from. You're moving money from stabilization and you're moving it into a trust fund. So if you're moving money from stabilization to a trust fund, to me, you can say, well, it came from this line item, but essentially, if you're taking money from stabilization, you're moving it into a trust fund. And I just have a tough time moving money or moving 750,000 out of stabilization and say, well, we're gonna park some money in the situation. Say, well, we're gonna park some money in this trust fund. So but I understand the theory. I appreciate it, and it's a small amount of money, but I appreciate it.
It was not included in the prior round of reductions. So it's a reduction to inspectional services that was not part of the stabilization, but I take your point.
Mr. Wells?
Are we sure? Are we sure? No.
I know.
So,
no.
I wanted to listen. No. I wanted to listen. So I have 3 points. Thank you to all of you, Michael, Katie. This has been, I'm purposely tried to stay out of this. I mean, the benefit that I do have is 10 years, actually 20 years of doing budgets. So I get that. I mean, when Katie was first on the warrant committee, her first presentation as warrant committee chair, when she would I don't know if you remember when you did the presentation at town meeting on the budget busters? Remember that PowerPoint presentation you did?
It was borrowed from prior chairman, so I can't take any credit for it.
I just hear some reason it popped in my head. You're giving it tonight. So these are tough. These are the public safety part is tough for me because you say, oh, we're not 2 police positions. Well, those 2 jobs were cut in 2009. It took 7 years to get them refunded. And they weren't even back in the budget since 2017. If this were 6 weeks ago, as Mr. Dennehy knows, we'd be laying off 2 police officers. The chief would have to lay 2 because he just got lucky. 2 vacancies occurred, and you're not going to fund them. But those are big things. The one risk I want to say is both for the police, fire, and the DPW is, when you cut personnel, you run the chance of them having to come back for reserve fund transfers over time, because it's just not you force the chiefs into a situation where they kind of have to roll the dice now with how they deploy their personnel because they let people move around, less overtime to spend. So my bigger point is, in your discussions, do we have a plan for how we're going to put this back? Because I don't see an override doing this. How do you go and have another override? Say, okay, we want to fund 2 police and 2 fire positions that were funded in a 2017 override to begin with. What's the plan for trying to make this up? Particularly, I'm concerned on the town side because you're taking a $600,000 hit.
Madam Chair, I can take that one.
Yep.
Right. So the timing of, thank you, Mr. Wells, for that. Very, very insightful and very on point. Never really thought we'd be 5 years later and removing positions that took 9 years to get back on the books. That is clearly not what Chief King wanted to do, but as you mentioned, there were some retirements and there were some positions that will ultimately open up so that we will not have to lay off a police officer. We all heard from our state elected contingent back in January that they're confident that this budget is going to change and we should see some improvement, similar to what we saw last year. Not sure where it's going to come in, but this is the budget that is balanced today, right? March 10th, and we will see some changes, right? When the House and Senate work on their budget, and they're doing it in a much more timely fashion this year, per all of our state electeds. We should know that sooner rather than later, but unfortunately, we will probably, town meeting may have passed us by then. But I'm very confident that obviously the priority for me is to make sure we fund those positions again, and make sure that our stabilization is reimbursed. We did a very good job of it last year. I wish we put that last $250,000 back in, but everything worked out for everyone. And I appreciate all the work that was done by this board and all the financial committees in town. Karen Praval is going to be here next week to brief us on the American Rescue Plan Act, which is coming out of the Biden administration. We did, I don't want to, get too far down the road on it. She participated in a webinar today hosted by the Commonwealth's Administration and Finance, but it looks like there will be some one-time funding coming back to the town, both in fiscal 21, and I believe Karen said within the next 12 months after that. So you have to look at that in 2 pieces. I think that first piece is to replenish everything that we're taking from now, and make that rainy day fund maybe even in more robust than we have it today. So there is a plan.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Dennehy. I do have a question. I know I reached out to Mr. Dennehy about our spreadsheet because I'm just a little confused about one number. So in looking at the gray column that was updated today, and I think maybe I'm just, there's a missing piece of information that I'm missing under stabilization and free cash in the gray. It says 1,683,317. And that's actually free cash plus 750,000 of stabilization. And then that's an extra $251,400 in that number. Whereas the number next to it that were additions as of 3/9/21 to the left, that number is free cash of 681,917 and 750,000. So I just want to make sure that we actually don't have extra money here, and that looking at Mr. Zulis's $65,000 difference, I just want to make sure that 1,683,313 is the number for stabilization free cash, because it doesn't seem.
It also includes the 251,400 of available funds. The delta between the 1,683 and the 1.4 number is that column to the left, which was the recommended budget. The recommended budget was 251,400, and that's made up of a bunch of stuff. If you look to the far left column, that's what was used in FY21. That included $1 million of stabilization and approximately, I believe we had $1.7 million in free cash, but we used a good portion of that. But yeah, that is the aggregate of the FY22 recommended budget, and the addition of 750 of stabilization and the 681 and change thousand that we received in free cash that was verified by the Department of Revenue.
Okay.
And Mike, just to put a point, I think that is overlay of 250 and leash law of 1,400. I think that's what those.
Thank you. That's what I was
looking for.
That
is exactly what it is. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. I knew it was.
And if I might, if there's no more comments, I am amenable to Mr. Zulis's proposed changes.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Zulis. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And I'll say as well, I'm amenable to Mr. Dennehy's budget. It's really very close. It's directionally in the same place. It's just a slight philosophical difference on how we get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's worth mentioning that both of our numbers for school are an awkward, crooked number, because that was the number that we backed into, right? We've been working with the town departments to do some cuts. And then when we netted out an increase in the excise tax from the treasurer and new growth from the chief appraiser, and we looked at the town side, that was the number that we backed into with Milton Public Schools absorbing that 32% portion. It's probably a little lower than that, Mr. Zulis, with your presentation, but.
Thank you. Mr. Doyle.
This is very pleased to hear, Madam Chair, the conversation between our two Michaels. I had a question for Mr. Dennehy today, and I, in conversation with him about that question, said that from what I had worked out, I was willing to go to a maximum of $800,000 from the stabilization fund. The presumption being that any largesse that we're fortunate to have would be for replenishment purposes, including the $250,000 outstanding from the stabilization fund. But as I went through the process, what kept ringing in my mind was where we are going to be 36 months from now, even with the possibility of a fully restored stabilization fund, and ideally an increased stabilization fund beyond the $4.4 million. I would like to suggest that we, in not too distant considerations, have that on the table, and included in that the possibility of having, as part of the select board's financial responsibilities, a required triennial override review, so that in the third year of any budget process, the board would have to do a review to ascertain whether or not an override would be warranted at one financial level or another. And if not, in that third year for the fourth year, in the fourth year, one would have to do the same until there is an override, because we're bumping up against some difficult times in the future, possibly, regardless of COVID. And I think planning for that in an organized and calendared manner is going to be a very important procedure for us to consider. So those are just my comments for future consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Does anyone else have something you'd like to say at the moment?
Madam Chair, if Mr. Dennehy's open to following Mr. Zulos's approach, I'm okay with that, because as I said, I think they're all in the same ballpark here. What I do think is that I know that Mr. Dennehy was looking at additional cuts in other smaller departments. If the amount, Mike, that Zulos that you proposed was 796 from stabilization, and Arthur's willing to go to 800, I'd like to make it an even number and use the 4,000, and any additional savings that Mr. Dennehy achieves in a smaller department, even if it winds up being $5,000 or $10,000, for it to be put into the OPEB trust fund, because I think we need to continue to show good faith with the bond rating agencies that we're putting this on the radar. We want town meeting members to know how important it is. We want the general public to know how important it is. And we want the bond rating agencies to know that we're taking very seriously what our future liability is, and that we're going to, once we fully fund the retirement system, the accrued liability for their retirement, that we're going to be transferring that over to the OPEB trust in a matter of a few years. So I think it's important that we continue to have the OPEB article in the warrant, and that we're funding it with something. So that would be my only change to suggest to what Mr. Zulos has already suggested, and Mr. Denny, he seems open to.
Katie, Katie, I think that's an elegant way of handling it. I think it's well done. I just want to say one other thing. Mike mentioned the American Recovery Plan and I'll throw in there the CARES Act. There are, and the school committee's made this clear, and I think it's fair to say there are a fair number of students, a lot of families who are hurting because of the remote learning and the hybrid learning that's gone on in the last year. My hope is that the utilization of one-time funds, such as CARES Act funds, to the extent we have CARES Act funds left over, and such as American Recovery Plan Act funds, can be used to set up those programs to help those students out that need to get back to where they need to be after a year of remote and hybrid learning. So my hope is that we can tap into those monies as one-time funds, as opposed to setting up an operational structure that would continue for years, after which we may not need it. So again, my hope is that those one-time funds can be used for additional programs that the schools can do. We saw one proposal already for a program over the summer, so that those one-time funds can be used for those programs to help those families that need it after the year of remote and hybrid learning.
Mm-hmm. And I think actually there are ARP funds specifically for schools for summer programs. So that should be very helpful in addition to those SR2 funds that are available, some of which I believe have already been sent out. So I agree. I like this approach that we've developed. And I appreciate too the suggestion about how to still fund OPED at the same time. So I would be willing to, as Katie said, make stabilization a round number and round up.
Do we need a vote, Madam Chair? It sounds like we have a consensus on what we've just discussed, and maybe Mr. Dennehy could revise this and get it over to the warrant committee by Friday.
Right. I think I would feel better if we voted on it, since we do seem to have a consensus.
I agree.
Okay.
I'll move that we support the town administrator's budget proposal with the amendments that we discussed this evening.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. And thank you very much to our finance team here for all the work and guiding us through this conversation.
Thank you,
And for
everyone.
answering
I
my question
appreciate
about
your
overlay.
support.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
No, you're
Mike.
doing a great job. Thank you.
I'll pass your
Um,
thanks on to the team. Great team we have. Thank you.
Okay, so next we are up and it's Mr. Wells with our Capital Improvement Planning Committee recommendations. So
And Madam
the
Chair, before Richard starts, I'm going to recuse myself on this because it's all bonded. There's no non-bonded capital being recommended here. So I'll come back
Right,
once you're finished your discussion and your vote.
thank you.
I just wanted to tell you, I didn't use the 100,000. Yes.
We appreciated that, Richard.
I know you did. I know. Thank you, Madam Chair. So you have before you Michael, I know this was late today. Do they have the amended one with the $10,000
Yes.
removal?
Yeah, I forwarded that along. Thank you.
So, being chair of capital is a new role for, it's not something this came when Amy stepped down and move over to the schools. So, I'm still feeling my way through this. Most people don't realize that we have millions of dollars of property and assets that we own in this community, from schools to small buildings to equipment to things that make the town tick. And to quote Bill Ritchie, Director of Consolidated Facilities, if you don't take care of these things, then one day you wind up just an abyss that you can't get out of. And we've invested so much in our schools, new buildings, the library. Now we're going to embark on new fire stations, equipment for the DPW, so many different things that I think the committee, it's very diverse, and it clearly has a good grasp of this. As Mike Dennehy knows, he comes to all the meetings, and Karen Faval jumped right in from the day she got here. So you have before you a lien proposal of, I believe it's $2,925,000. Would that be correct, Michael? That'd be the new number. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Which just outlines what we consider were true priorities that we had to address this year. Some of the things like the police and fire, the infrastructure, the police and fire RMS systems has an end of life. It's going to end this year. It's no longer going to be, and if we don't purchase a new system and matriculate the existing systems into it, and all of that data, like on the police side, goes all the way back to 1993 in the RMS system, you would lose it forever. Or have to run two systems, which for both Chief King and Chief Madden, I couldn't even envision doing. So do you want me to go through it, Madam Chair? Or do you just want to vote the number, or do I have any questions?
Well, I think that people would be interested in knowing if you could quickly run through, especially the highlights. That would be great, because people don't really know what we're going to be voting on otherwise.
So this starting with Public Works, these are critical pieces. This is going to replace an old snowplow track that does the sidewalks in the, we've had a fair significant amount of snow this year. That they're also going to replace their paving roller, which is, I don't even know, Michael, how old that is, and is if you saw it, go ahead.
It's ancient, and the opportunity cost of having to pay a contract to do a lot of that work that you're doing in-house, to Mr. Wells's point and to Mr. Ritchie's point, you can do it a lot sooner and a lot less expensive internally. So
Right.
confident that Public Works is maximum amount of savings doing that internally.
So that's for $50,000. The tree replacement program that was on there, that's going to be in the DPW director's operating budget, that $10,000 he's moving. We've all heard from the Shade Tree Advisory Committee how important it is. We lose about 150 trees a year in this town annually. So someone articulated to us, if you took an aerial view from 10 years ago to an aerial view today, you'd notice a dramatic difference. So We were able to prioritize and put $1 million for roadway construction. I mean, our roads are used every day, and that's really about 10% of what we actually would need. A big thing is DPW waste oil. We had one of these years ago, and they take all the waste oil from all the vehicles that are serviced there, and they use that oil to heat the furnace system that heats the building. It's actually a very smart environmental thing to do, and it removes the hazard of us having to handle and dispose of oil in an off-site location. And we felt that was a priority. We put that back in. There's also some upgrades to the on the school sides, pulley systems in the windows. Going back to school, having open windows is going to be critical in the pandemic. Having them back in class, these windows take a beating, and there was one that Mr. Ritchie presented very, articulately very well. Some roof repairs, gym floor replacement for the schools, the auditory lighting control system. This is a big number, but I don't think people realize, we go to it for town meeting, how much that auditorium is used in every day and how much the lighting system and the computerization are tied together, and it's been broken. And Bob Patterson argued strongly that we should do that. As did Mary Superintendent Gorman before she left. This was one of her priorities. So there's some other paving in there, paving improvements on the town facilities. I talked a little about the police fire software and the Lower Guile construction. This is a very big give. Scott McKay came 2 years ago. The Lower Guile field is really utilized a lot. I think that their long-term goal is to undertake an effort to put a turf field there, but this part of it has to be done. We tried to fund it last year, but we just couldn't do it, so it became a priority for Parks this year. So that's pretty much all. That it is a conservative. We did not touch free cash at all. Last year we used in the past 2 years I've been there, and we used a significant amount of free cash. I was aware of the situation that the finance committee was in and the town as a whole, and so we decided early on to not just be conservative, but to try and just bond what we could do for this year and not touch free cash at all. So the number that you have before you, as I say, is $2,925,000.
Right. Thank you. And I did want to also note that Collycott and Cunningham, there are going to be renovations to free up space for classrooms. And I think that's a much anticipated project too. And interestingly, that it's at 160,000 less than the auditorium lighting at 245,000. I did also want to note that so the debt service on that almost 3 million is about $77,000. So that's 76,839, and that would not be bonded until the following year.
Right,
so
correct.
we'd be doing some bond anticipation notes until then. But
And as we know, Madam Chair, from the most recent bond ratings that we got, the finance rates that we got, talking with the collector treasurer and Carol, we think that just because of COVID and the low rates that we're experiencing now will extend through the next year. So hopefully when we do go out for this next year, we're still looking at a very good percentage rate when we do go to bonds. So
great, thank you.
that's pretty much it. And thank Michael for his help and all the department heads who came before us. We know it was tough, and we didn't give them much we didn't give them much. And the sheet that I have is probably 25 pages thick of capital requests. And as you see, funding up, 3/4 of a page.
Well, thank you. Mr. Dennehy?
Yeah, and I want to thank Richard. He ran a great, he chaired a great group. Two things that he didn't really touch upon, and again, there's a lot in here, but I do want to mention that the Council on Aging is getting 2 items. They're getting a generator. So oftentimes the town might lose power, or it could be extremely cold and someone might lose power in their home. It could be a warming station, it could be a cooling station, but the ability to have a generator in that building is paramount. So this committee understood that and addressed it. It's a $40,000 generator that will be installed at the Council on Aging. And then due to COVID, Director Stanton and her wonderful team over there started doing a lot more activities outside. They used the back entrance. It's a brick walkway. it's in need of major repairs. That was also the gateway to the basketball court over at Walnut and Clap, where so many of our seniors participated in some exercises. So there's a $35,000 number penciled into that to replace that back walkway area. They sit there, they read books, they have tea, they played ukuleles there. So there was a lot of COVID-related outdoor activity where people could socially distance, but it's relatively unsafe. So that's going to be addressed first thing as well. So, but again, great committee, great members, both people who are on committees in town, employees of the town, or we have Michael Hale and Lorraine D that have been on that committee for quite some time, the residents on the committee. So again, great work. We will miss April Anderson going forward. This is her last year doing that. So I want to thank April for her service. But again, thanks to Richard and all the department heads and everyone on this committee for this recommendation.
Just one final point, Madam Chair. One of the things that I relayed to Mr. Denny at our last meeting on Friday is as soon as we get through town meeting, we're going to meet immediately to look at, to prioritize those items that we couldn't get at this year so that they're already on the radar for next year as the capital committee begins their deliberations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wells. And thank you for taking that on. Mr. Doyle? You're muted. Mr. Doyle, you're still muted.
Thank you for the reminder. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wells mentioning of the diminishing tree canopy in town reminds me of the fact that we do have a tree bank in the town under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. Don't hold me to downs on this right now, but I believe up to $15,000 can be drawn out annually from that tree bank for replenishment purposes on town properties. So maybe we can put this into the mix for some savings and reallocation of funds or whatever within the capital improvement budget or elsewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle.
Thank you, Arthur. I think we've used that in the past, haven't we, Michael, as well as some private money that's gone into
There's a lot of private money in there. Yeah, I think Wallaston Golf Club had to put some money in there and a variety of other developments that took place. So I connected Mr. Doyle's email about that tree bank to DPW Director Berkeley. He does have money in his operations budget as well to address that. And to your point, Mr. Wells, we lost so many trees year over year. We're playing catch up. Right. So we will start our campaign. Fall is the best time to plant, but they do plant in the spring, hoping that we don't get, drought-like conditions in the summertime. So we will start a campaign and a push. And remember, Vice Chair Conlon already identified some spots on Reedsdale where we can begin some planting. So, but I asked the public to just look forward to that and thank Member Doyle and the Conservation Commission for making that available to the town this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur.
Excellent. So at this point, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee as presented.
Second. All those in favor, Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
You, Mr. Wells?
Should I vote on this, Madam Chair? I don't try. So there's so many.
I think it's fine. We know you're going to vote yes.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. And Ms. Conlon is recused. And now we are on to our next agenda item, which is 16. So this is our discussion of town meeting articles, and we don't necessarily need to discuss these at the moment and what our position is. But I do want to note something that Ms. Conlon said, and this really speaks more to item 17. So I don't know if people want to have the discussion on the articles or if we'd like to to do that at a future time. Ms. Conlon?
Madam Chair, I wonder whether we should just take a vote on 16B, which was the citizens petition on the taxation issue, since I think that's a very easy vote, and we do not need to have the lengthy discussion that the warrant committee had on it. We can knock this one off in about 2 minutes.
That's true. Right. So
I'll move that we recommend, or that we support the warrant committee's recommendation of a no vote on the citizens petition to exempt seniors from overrides.
I'll second.
you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Collins, yes, excellent. I'm happy to move forward if we'd like to vote on the rest of these today. I don't know that we need
Fine
to.
as well, Madam Chair. If you want to, do you feel we need to vote on them?
Well, before town meeting, I think it is important for us to take a position, but I don't know that we need to do it today. I can pick out a handful that I think would go very quickly, but
Go for it. It's one thing off the table. Just go for it. The piles get awful high here very quickly.
okay. Well, let's see. I'll just name them, and you tell me if we can vote these. So the town administrator legislation, the income threshold for senior real property tax, the reduced interest rate for real property tax, the earth materials removal, deposit and fill, the floodplain district boundaries and base flood elevations, the extending the term of bylaw review committee, and the establishment of the municipal lighting plant. I think those we could move to support, I suppose.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair, to support each of those that you just articulated.
I'll second.
Yes, Ms.
Madam
Conlon.
Chair, I may just abstain on the planning board articles. There are two of them. I just haven't read them in detail. They're not our articles. They're the planning boards, which are F and G.
Well,
If the majority of the board wants to vote them, I'm fine with that, and I think I'll just abstain on them.
well, why don't we wait if everybody hasn't really had a chance to absorb them, because we may want to discuss them. So I'd feel better about just not covering E, F, and G.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. Thank you for mentioning that. And thank you, Mr. Wells.
Thank you.
I think, did we have a second?
Yes, I'll agree.
Mr. Zulus, do you have something?
I just want to make sure. So we're focusing on A and
A, B,
Okay.
C. Yeah, A, B, C.
B.
D.
We did right. A, so,
Yeah. B, we've
Oh,
already
right, we
voted.
just did that. Sorry, A, C, D.
Yeah.
I should pay attention to my own crossouts. A, C, D,
H.
H, and I.
That's correct.
Thank you.
The only thing I would suggest is we pardon me, we may want to, I see Mr. Freitag is here. We may want to make sure that the municipal lighting plant article is in good order.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Hello, Mr. Freitag. Thank you again for joining us.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair. Kevin Freitag, Office of Town Council. I am in the process of confirming that article is in good order. The real test there is whether or not DPU will certify a vote on the question of town meeting, because that's the process. It would be voted by town meeting and then certified by DPU. So I've reached out to DPU to speak with them to understand exactly what they're looking for in a vote. And I suspect it's what we proposed, but I just wanted to double check, and then I'll come back to the select board with a response on that.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. It's very helpful.
That makes sense. So we're at A, C, D, and H then.
Yes. Do you accept that friendly amendment, Richard?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do.
Thank
Second
you.
does as well.
Okay, excellent. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Oh, that's great. And I made a note of the articles that we'll need to revisit in that way. So moving on to item 17, scheduling of articles for special town meeting. To be honest, I can't quite remember our discussion around this, but I think what we're alluding to here is something that Ms. Conlon pointed out. This is a lot of articles, and is there an opportunity to move some of them to a future town meeting? Usually, we have our special town meeting in the fall. I don't know if people have particular feelings about those. I haven't had a conversation with April Anderson, who's the chair of the planning board. They have quite a few articles. And I think the Board of Assessors does understand that this is a pretty packed town meeting, because they actually acknowledged that when they talked to Mr. Dennehy and myself. I was reluctant to push that off to a future town meeting, because this had already come to town meeting and been referred back, and people, town meeting was very much looking forward to this article when it came last time. And as Mr. Zoul said, we're eager to help people stay in their homes. So for that reason, I didn't ask them to hold off on submitting it. However, I'm open to people's thoughts.
I mean, I think we need to move forward with the relief for seniors. I really do. And I don't think, my hope is that wouldn't generate too much discussion or take too much time at town meeting. But I think it's important to move forward on those two.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Madam Chair, it's one of the reasons I think we should try to reach out to this Cortland Circle group of citizens and I'm just noticing that the language at the top of the page they signed is a little different than the article. So I'm actually just confused by what this submission is. I thought it had come in late, but I'm told it came in on time before the deadline. So
right.
I agree that we probably have to go forward with the ones that we have, unless the planning board might decide that some of them are not time sensitive. And I think that is a conversation worth having. Hopefully, as we go through the next few weeks, we'll have broad consensus on the budget with the school committee and the warrant committee, and that might make the budget articles go a little more quickly, but that might be wishful thinking. We'll see. Right.
Well, I think the earth removal and deposit fill, and also the floodplain district, those I don't think will be difficult. They're pretty cut and dried, and one just asks for an extra plan in order to understand where trees are on the property that should be saved, and to keep fill away from them. And the other one, I wish that I had thought to ask Allison about that while she was here. That one, I'll get more information. I can't quite remember, but again, it's a very straightforward, sort of technical bylaw change. That's just, it's needed. And I don't think bylaw review committee should be, should have much discussion. So, okay. So for now, we'll just move forward, and I will call the chair of the planning board just to check in and see how things are going. I haven't seen the last couple of meetings, even though I had attended some on the accessory dwelling units in the beginning. Great. So item 18, I actually don't have another draft of, our second batch of comments about 648 Canton Avenue, but we do have time. Those hearings are just starting, and last night was the first really substantial one. I thought it went really well. Mr. Zerwinski, not only is he representing the town, but he was there trying to help them with process around, just some technical things, people putting actual questions in the Q&A because no one turned it off. So, so I think it's off to a good start, and we have time because those peer reviews are just going to start coming in as of next week. Does anyone have any questions or comments about 40B hearings in general? No.
I do under item 18A on the other proposals, not 648 Canton, but 582 Blue Hill Avenue. That proposal has been revised substantially by the developer. So I think we're going to need to weigh in on that. The planning board, I think, will be weighing in on it. They've already asked to weigh in on all of them after the peer reviews are presented. So we should probably weigh in on the revised plan after the new architectural design is submitted.
Right.
Which I think is a couple of weeks away, but
yeah, what we saw was just basically a very high level site plan with 2 extra buildings and the house and the garden saved. And it was interesting if the landscape architect peer reviewer was there, if you wanted to hear what she had to say about the garden. And
I still think it's I think the redesign is a concerning proposal, even though they're proposing to save the gardening and the mansion. The 2 very large buildings are going to cast shadows on the garden and create, it's really still a very intense use of the property. So we should probably consider weighing in with either a letter or oral testimony.
Right. I do agree. I think it's important to wait for the architectural plans because it's hard to understand how it will fit in with the McGinley house. And there is a reduction in units though. It's like a 22% reduction. So it's 99 units or 92 units, something like that. But okay, thank you. And oh, the other thing, I'm not sure if people are interested. For the Ice House also had a hearing, and the peer reviewer, their architecture team, and engineer Tim Zerwinski, Judy Barrett, they're all going to have a working session together to review some of the architectural features and parking, things like that. So just so you know what's going on. Okay, 19, town administrators review. So we were talking about scheduling, and I think some members actually have theirs in on time. I'm just finishing mine up. And I just wanted to ask Mr. Zulus for a new due date because we want to give him time to compile I asked Mr. Dennehy if he had a particular date in mind. Under his contract, it's supposed to be the 15th, and I just want to acknowledge that. But he said at the moment, when we talked anyway, he didn't have a particular date in mind, so he's being very understanding.
You can give me a due date, but if you want to kick it to May, that's okay with me.
Right, you're a little busy right now. I get that.
But if we need to do it before that, that's fine. I don't want to leave Mike hanging. I think I gave my review tonight, but yeah, I mean, I'm half joking. So yeah, whenever you all want to do it, we'll, as we do have a couple of things already submitted, so I can put something together whenever we want to do it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I could have mine to you tomorrow, actually.
Madam Chair, I disagree with part of what Mike Zula said is that I don't want to leave this hanging out there for Mr. Dennehy. Let's just get it off the table, get it done, and just do it.
Okay. Right. Okay.
As Michael said, I think each week we're given part of it anyway, so as was tonight. So I'd just be much more comfortable getting it off our plate.
Okay,
So we can try for the 24th. Then,
okay.
Okay.
you know, that's good. We'll do the 24th.
That's
At least it's not
Okay.
April. At least it's not April.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, I'll have it to you tomorrow. Item 20, acceptance of grants to the Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. So I'll move to accept a grant of $10,000 from Mike's 5K to crush substance abuse to the Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. And I have to say thank you very much for this generous gift and for everyone who participated and sponsored people. It would have been easy, I think, for people to skip this year, and yet we didn't. And it's very, very much appreciated. We all know someone in some way who's struggled with addiction. So.
I'll second if there wasn't a second. Okay.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Thank you. And we already took care of 21. Future meeting dates. Tomorrow we're having our fire station forum. And I think everyone got the questions. So that's tomorrow. And then our next regular meeting is the 24th, as we've just said. There's finance meeting on Monday, and that's posted for the full board as well. And I think the full board's also posted for warrant committee, just in case more than 2 of us need to go. And I don't think we have any interim meetings scheduled. Wow, that might be, we might make this month with only 2 meetings instead of, what was it, 8 last month? Yeah. So
Busy times, busy times.
yes. Okay. So is there anything else under future meeting dates? No. Town administrators report. Mr. Dennehy.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I have 3 items tonight. Energy aggregation. So on the past 2 agendas, we had talked about this board taking a look at the electrical service agreements. Myself and Madam Chair joined the Good Energy team. Good Energy is the consultant working on behalf of the town to facilitate this energy aggregation program for the town of Milton. We were to go out to bid this past yesterday. They have postponed that. What they're going to do now is put this out to bid in May 21st, preferably. What that will do is that will give the town a look at the summer rates as well, which can be some of the highest rates that people face in the Northeast. So the marketing campaign and everything that we had planned to do has been pushed back roughly 6 to 8 to 10 weeks. But we will be reaching out. The marketing campaign will begin shortly. Just an announcement that the bid has been postponed and will be going out on May 21st rather than yesterday. Not sure if you want to add anything to that, Madam Chair, but that's the short version of conference calls that we were on with Good Energy over the past week.
Right. Well, one thing I did want to say is a Sustainable Milton we've Good Energy's been coordinating with them so that they can send out the same messages through all their channels, and we're going to be just having a little follow-up meeting with them on Friday just to make sure that they're in the loop and know that they're appreciated. So
thank you, Madam Chair. The second item tonight is the intersection of Brush Hill Road, Milton Street, and the Ponset Valley Parkway. As many of you know, that's one of the most dangerous intersections in our town. It's a truck route. It's close to Fuller Village. It's embedded in the Brush Hill neighborhood. So Department of Conservation and Recreation has put out an RFP to design and re-engineer that intersection. I spoke to Mark Gravelis, who this board is familiar with. Mark was one of the lead engineers on the East Milton Deck project for Howard Stein Hudson. They will be submitting a proposal. It's my understanding it will touch upon the intersection just past Paul's Bridge, as well as the other intersection up by the Flatley Fields, which, as we all know, can be equally as dangerous. So we do appreciate the DCR taking a look at this intersection, work that was done on behalf of this board, and letters submitted to the DCR about the problems in that area. We saw some short-term movement this year with stop signs being placed at various points in that intersection. So I appreciate DCR's efforts to take a look at this and try to come up with a more permanent solution for this very awkward intersection, and know that Craig Cashman from DCR and Commissioner Jim Montgomery will send representation to this board to present when the bids have been submitted and they have the design process started. So I would anticipate that would be sometime in April, possibly May. And then the last item is also surrounding construction in town. So as I mentioned earlier, the East Milton deck project is back on. They're still working on phase 2. Specifically, anyone that's been through this square recently has noticed the sidewalk bump out in front of the post office, which was one of the highlights of this project, was to improve the pedestrian and actually all modes of traffic in this area. So effective next Monday, March 15th, Edge Hill Road from the post office towards towards Boulevard Street, towards Cunningham Park, will be one-way only. Vehicles will no longer be able to travel from Edge Hill Road left of Jackrabbit as they would previously. That's going to be a permanent change and a subsequent change to Boulevard Street. That third lane that is currently used for westbound traffic, if you pass the Shell station, you're allowed to take a right and pass the Empire Building and Milton Times and pass Jackrabbit on your right. That is going at a future date to become eastbound only, so that all 3 lanes on Boulevard Street will traverse towards the square. But effective next Monday, the traffic pattern will change, and Edge Hill Road, again, from the post office to Jackrabbit, which is the intersection of Boulevard Street, towards Cunningham Park, will be one-way only. And I think that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Denny.
Thank you.
I do not have a report. Member reports, Ms. Conlon.
I would like to congratulate the chair, Melinda Collins, who has been appointed to serve on the Mass Municipal Association's Labor and Employment Policy Committee. And those are important committees that do great work. So congratulations to Melinda, and thank you for stepping up and doing that. And I'm sure the MMA is grateful for your service, and I know you'll bring a lot of good ideas back to Milton. So congratulations and thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to learning a lot, that's for sure. And I will try to bring some valuable insights back from that group. And Mr. Doyle?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Mr. Wells?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Just a bit of sad news that I received tonight. Longtime resident and former school superintendent, Dr. Frank Giuliano, his wife Janet passed away late this afternoon. And anyone who knows that family, they've been huge contributors to this community. Seems like we say goodbye too often, but I just want to extend our condolence, or ask that we extend our condolences and sympathies to Dr. Giuliano's family at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Zulus?
No report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. There's no public comment to respond to. Future agenda items, I think we've been collecting those, but does anyone have something we haven't talked about? Okay.
Madam Chair, just the one that I sent you this week. I think regarding East Milton, that's a subject I think we want to get on a future agenda. We need to address this sooner versus later.
Why don't, since the whole, why don't you just,
So I learned it I don't know if anyone has picked up on it, but I learned, if you recall, prior to arriving, Arthur, but if you recall, Howard Stein Hudson and particularly Havelson in their, what I thought was the final design review, and then I didn't even notice it till I was looking. I actually found it 3 months ago, Michael, about 2 months ago. From the comments that they got from both the 25 or the 50 and the 75 meetings, input from residents was there was a lot of support to have some type of outside venue on the deck. And actually, in a June of 2019 presentation that was given to us, it's actually shown there in the northwest corner, which would be the corner near Boulevard and Bryant Ave. And somehow, I was looking at the final presentation. It was a couple months ago, Michael, and it was gone. And then I went and met with both the chamber, the MAC. So none of them knew this. They all thought it was going to be there. And I think that this is really a critical aspect to have. You know, one of the things that Katie knows is that when the park was first developed and was there, it was never really used. And this is something that would bring it to life. And we know just from the temporary proposal for that winter plaza, the support it got, and the people that really talked about having something on the deck. So I don't know about the funding. And Michael and I have talked a little bit, like Denny. I think we're going to have to get some private funding, but I think we need to at least get this on the agenda. Let everyone take a look at it and address this now versus the deck's done, and then well, what happened to the it's called a pavilion actually in the design.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I just thought that the other members should understand what you were talking about. Thank you. And we'll put it on a future agenda so that we can talk about it and maybe understand a little bit more about process
Mike Dennehy, if you could, that design that I sent to you, Melinda, you just circulate to the whole board so they can see it and then look at it, because it's dramatically different from what the final design is now.
Yeah, no, I did research, and so I'll have Hillary put it together in the packet. Just
thank you very much.
And you're welcome. I think Mike will have some insight for us too. So we're on to community happenings, and it's a bit of a ways off, but the COA will be having or has proposed intergenerational Tai Chi on the basketball court for, I think it's 5 consecutive weeks in the evening. So it's 6:45 till 8:15 or something like that. And we just wanted to let people know that that's a very interesting happening, and that we'll make sure that there's a sign up, and we'll mention it again as time draws near, because that for those few days, people won't be able to play basketball during those times. And I'm sure there'll be a lot more information about how to sign up. And at this time, I move pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Subsection A, Subsection 6, to enter into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Sometimes this is known as Purpose 6. And I move based on my belief that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect upon the negotiating position of the Select Board, specifically with regard to 432 Adams Street, 41 Wharf Street, 334 Edge Hill Road, and not to return to open session in order to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Thank you. Um, and I think we'll probably take 31 and 30 and 31 first so that we can let Mr. Freitag go.
Thank you, everybody. And for those members of the public still on the meeting, you can choose to leave or we can take you out of the meeting in about 30 seconds. We're just closing down our recording. And from there, we will